Time now to drill down into the state of the tech nation and take a look at the trends behind the tech to make sure there are no blind spots being missed in your organisation. And who better to delve into them than BT's Chief Digital and Innovation Officer, Harmeen Mehta. Hello, Harmeen. Good to see you.
Good to see you again, David.
And we also have joining us Research Director at CCS Insight, Bola Rotaby. Hello, Bola.
Hello, David. Good to see you today.
Lovely to see you both. We've just set another poll live on the screen, so please do help shape our conversation with your thoughts and your comments, and we'll come back to those in just a moment. Take a look at that poll. Let us know what your thoughts are. But first, Harmeen, I'll come to you. I know you're relatively new to BT as the Chief Digital and Innovation Officer, and you've joined at a really, really interesting time, not only for society and for the industry, but also for BT as it embarks on its own transformation. Tell me, what's impressed you most so far in your time here?
I think one of the things that has really come out really strongly is just the last, 18 to 24 months. I mean, the world was thrown in a frenzy. There's no business school that ever prepared you for a pandemic like this. And I think how well both the organization and the country reacted to that. I know there are lots of views on that, but what I know is that just the traffic on our network, more than doubled. Instead of, sites which are capacitized around areas where there are concentration of commercial buildings and where the offices were, those were completely empty. And where the homes were, and all those home sites, which are normally capacitized only for traffic that you would see in the evenings as, people get home, etc. during the day. Now everything happening on video calls, and video leaves a very, takes a large chunk of the network capacity. Just how well the teams dealt with that. As well as, we're very fortunate. We run the emergency services for the country, and, how well we coped with 999 calls. And in fact, a few months back, when it was the pandemic and the World Cup and many other things happening, we saw some of the highest volume ever. And I just think for a large organization, what I really liked seeing was, in a crisis, we really adapted very well for our customers. We were there for our customers. We were there to meet their needs. Broadband in every home, making every, Zoom video call, Teams call come to life, getting all that done. I think really, really proud about the speed, agility, and customer obsessiveness that we showed to really get the right experience for them. Was fantastic.
Because it's easy to take for granted what we've been able to achieve by working from home over the last 18 months or so. But you go back to the beginning of the pandemic and this realisation that we were going to be potentially streaming large volumes of expensive, in terms of bandwidth, video from home. I think there were a lot of doubts about whether the network would be able to cope with the increased strain that was put upon it. But to your point, it's coped admirably well.
Absolutely, and I think what it's also done for the telecom industry, it's, something that was not top of our minds for a long time. Suddenly, every customer, every home, every office has now realized that this is what a good telecommunication service can actually do for them. It's also changed, our ways of working, I think, have changed forever. And I think the way we live our lives has also changed forever. The balance between home and work, and how we what we consider important to all of us. As all of that changes, we're a part of society, and our customers are a part of society. We all have to just adapt to that. So I think that adaptability has been fantastic, both as a human race and as a country, and especially as a company.
Indeed. Bola, you've been an industry analyst for a little while, but you've seen lots of technologies emerge, become adopted, and then become business as usual. What are the technologies that you're seeing emerge at the moment, and how are you seeing the benefits, the impacts they're having on organisations and on customers?
Well, first of all, I'd like to sort of piggyback off what Harmeen was saying, is in terms of the technologies that are emerging. In fact, some of them have sort of been emerging, and in fact, we've just got to use them a lot better. Like improved connectivity has allowed us to have, sort of almost connect, with people working from home and now going back into the office, that sort of nice, seamless interaction between people in the office and at home. So that's one of the things. The other thing is video streaming, and that's been around for a while, but really, we've really kind of had to embrace it. And I think people are now starting to see it in more, in different aspects of their lives, not just, for working environments, but also for home life. I mean, how many of us actually did quizzes at home when we all had to do that and everyone was on a Zoom call or a Teams call or anything? So, I mean, I think it's actually now starting to see that it's part of your life. I mean, you see it in other, factors like in, sort of healthcare, you kind of, sort of video streaming, you see your doctor not face to face, but through the, through a video. So I think that's one of the things. I think there's a lot of things around AI that's coming up in terms of personalization, predictability. So all of these are started, and not to forget mobile, that hasn't gone away. These are technologies that were, we've all had, sort of known about them, but we're actually now starting to see them really kind of like getting the most out of them, sort of unconnected devices and wearables. I mean, I'm wearing a Fitbit already, so so I think this is one of the things is that actually when we talk about sort of technology, sort of the emerging ones, they're actually now, I think what's important is that they're actually part of the way that we live and part of the way that we work, and I think that's the key. So.
And there's the observation that's been made by many people that if this pandemic had have taken place 20 years ago, how differently, because of the available technology, how differently we would have been able to respond to it. Because those technologies that we've now taken for granted, to your point, to an extent, they just weren't there, at least in the same extent to which they are right now. Thank you very much. I want to come back to our poll results. We asked you just a moment ago, what are your main transformational focuses for the next year? We've got some results from the poll on my screen, and, well, right at the top there by quite some margin, almost half of you think that it's about optimising customer experience. And then next one down there is improving productivity. So interesting stuff there. Harmeen, is this tallying up then with what you're seeing out in the market, would you say?
I would say very much so. I would have probably said, kind of increase in revenue, I would have thought would be a little bit more, only because of how hard the pandemic has hit so many of the industries and so many of our customers, especially, those which had maybe slightly less adaptable businesses, but also large businesses. I mean, let's see the impact on airlines, the hotel industry, the holiday industry, all of that's seen a massive impact. Even SMEs, I mean, we see, you walk down the high street and you see, every now and again, a lot more shops, closing, some big chains in the country just vanished. And as all that has happened, I think, but companies that have survived and done really well are the ones who have over-indexed on customer experience, as well as those who were a little bit more ready for the digital revolution. And even if they were not fully there and they just started that journey as well, they were able to accelerate much faster during this period. So that resonates very well with me. It's what we are seeing, and it's all the technologies that you're using behind, and whether it's cloud first, AI first, the more progressive you were, the better you were able to react, the faster you were able to react, and the better your customers felt about your businesses.
And maybe the results of that poll are actually quite optimistic, in as much as improved customer experience came ahead of revenue, but organisations, our viewers, realise that in order to increase revenue, you need to improve that customer experience.
And the productivity point is a very important one as well, because we've never felt as much of a need to measure productivity, because we've felt something that you see and it's there, and you meet all your people and they're there in the office every day, and you felt you were in control. And suddenly, leaders felt we've lost that control, and now there's a measure of productivity. So, and whereas a lot of my developers, a lot of my designers actually feel in the quiet of their home, their productivity is up, because they're more in that creative zone. They're more in, they're able to concentrate and not have the distraction. So that's going to be a very interesting one to watch as world opens up again.
Let's continue that productivity conversation, Bola. We saw reduced operational costs, improved productivity also feature in the poll there. Are there any trends that you're seeing that specifically meet this improving the internal efficiencies piece?
Oh, absolutely, actually, David. I mean, I think in terms of, and I think the thing is that I'd like to piggyback off that on the customer experience, because one of the other things is about employee experience. And we talk about customer experience, but I think if you don't have a good employee experience, you can't sort of almost deliver that customer experience. And I think employee experience is actually part of that efficiency, that productivity, because actually that is fundamental in terms of, you know, how they go about doing their jobs. The other side of it is the fact that some of these technologies, especially like, you know, when you think about AI, looking at predictivity, predictive analytics, improved performance and all this kind of stuff, and I know we'll talk about this later, but the thing is that I think that is where we're sort of trying to see where efficiencies are. How much automation can we do? The other side of things is how can we use some of the devices, especially connected devices, to see, you know, sort of how we can use them in a better way that is much more productive. And that ties into, for instance, you know, some of the things like voice control. You know, how can we, you know, sort of use voice control solutions like Alexa to do sort of execute commands? I know in the healthcare industry, they're still looking at that as to kind of, rather than calling a nurse or asking somebody else to come and change it, which, you know, maybe the patient can actually do voice command to either you know, sort of close the curtains, you know, sort of lower down the lights. All of that things is putting people in control, and that is another, you know, that's another sign of efficiency and productivity.
Yeah. Yeah, and the healthcare thing I think is really interesting, and I want to come back to that later on, but particularly with voice command, that as a mode of input, it's touch-free, which, you know, as we've learned in healthcare environments, is incredibly important. When the world changed last year, businesses had to do a lot of quick thinking to keep the lights on. So it's no surprise then to see in the Future in 2021 report a line about how during the pandemic, businesses adopted tech in a reactive rather than proactive way. More worrying, perhaps, though, is a recent report in the FT that says that 70% of execs claim their CEOs would sacrifice long-term growth for short-term financial goals. Bola, clearly there's a conflict there between the short-term and long-term thinking. How can organisations start to switch their thinking now to being back to more long-term and start thinking about their technology deployments more strategically?
Well, that's a really good point, actually. And I think because obviously everyone likes to think about, you know, long-term vision and strategy, I think it's actually about putting a team in place and having people who are empowered to kind of make, you know, those decisions, to think about, you know, sort of almost guardians of the vision, the long-term vision, but then also being able to, you know, sort of push that down into smaller teams who then go and enact it per, you know, depending on the departments that they come from, so that they can do some tactical, you know, sort of execution, but they're always in mind that long term. And I think that's the most important thing, is that they've got to work hand in hand. I think the challenge is that you take strategy and it becomes this kind of abstract notion, and then tactical is like, well, we've just got to get this fixed. Yeah. But the reality is that they've actually got to work together, so that strategy is, you know, the end-to-end vision and the long-term vision, but it's helping people to drive what they can do tactically that absolutely ties in and helps to sort of cement and progress that long-term vision. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is innovation labs. I mean, I know we talk a lot about these, but I think there's a real value in that, because it allows cross-organisational kind of participation. And I think that's really important, because it's an opportunity to get outside of the normal working environment, to think about what it is that you want to build, what it is that you know, what problems you are looking to really solve, and bringing multiple, you know, sort of stakeholders from different parts of the organisations to take, you know, part in that exercise.
In a bit more of an agile way than
Absolutely.
the traditional ways of working. Harmeen, when you are speaking with business leaders with whom you speak, how do you approach getting them to change how they think from that shorter term to more longer term? What's your ways of bridging that gap?
See, David, one thing that this decade has brought is it has changed what technology means in a business. We are now talking about, you know, you look at the largest companies in the world, they are tech-led businesses. Technology is increasingly the differentiator in the market. In the same industry, two companies behaving the same way, technology can actually be the difference between who's ahead and who's not. And I think somewhere at the heart of that, if we look at what we've seen in this decade, is we've seen the largest taxi company in the world is the one that doesn't own a taxi, which is Uber. You know, from going from When Hilton and Marriott were building hotels, the way to grow was you build a hotel, you grow more, you go to a new city, you build a hotel, you grow more. And now you got a room, a mattress, and you're a hotel, and that's what Airbnb changed. So the future telecommunications company might or might not be a telco, and the differentiation lies in how technology has been used to disrupt industries. So my advice to leaders, and especially the tech leaders out there, is don't wait for somebody to come and disrupt your industry. Be the disruptor yourself. Be bold, be fearless. Have that culture, work more like a startup culture where you're able to really embrace technology, build, measure, learn, bring those principles in, iterate fast, and work, get obsessed about your customers, their experience, and about the growth in the company. And, technology is not just an enabler. It could be the force, the wind beneath the wings for a business. So be that leader which actually works with the businesses to take that to the forefront. Watch out for your security and invest in it before the attack happens, not reacting to it after it has happened and then justifying I didn't have enough investment. We've all got enough, manpower, intellectual power in the organizations, and enough companies around us to help us on those journey. So just react fast and get out of analysis paralysis and get acting is my advice.
Very quickly, yes.
And I just want to add to that, because even though I said strategic teams, I thought actually that we're still saying the same things, because even though you might have a strategic team that's going across the organisation, custodian of the long-term vision, those tactical teams can be much more like startups, can really kind of like go out and really think about some of the things.
But these startups have great strategies as well. I think the strategy is important because you need to know what's the North Star.
Exactly.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
How you get there is where you want to iterate fast, learn fast, and then see. But yes, I mean, the North Star and the vision, or where the company wants to go, business wants to go, your customers are going, is essentially important. So I fully agree with you on that.
Where I want to go is to continue this conversation. However, the sands of time are against us. But listen, there is a question from one of our audience who I'd really like just to very quickly put to you. And I'm sorry we're not going to be able to get to all of the answers that we looked at. But this question from Rohit, and Bola, I'll come to you with this one, if I may. What impact do you see the Metaverse? Lots of conversation around the Metaverse over the last 2 or 3 weeks, as I'm sure you know. What do you see from the Metaverse in a way an organisation conducts its business? What technology implications should be aware of? So, I mean, what impact, very quickly, if you can, do you think the Metaverse will have on there? I don't think it features on our emerging technologies list in the survey, but it's certainly very much at the front of people's minds now.
I think it's going to have an impact, but it's going to be a kind of a long, a sort of ongoing impact, shall we say? Because let's face it, the Metaverse is not new. We had Second Life a few, more than a few years ago. I think the Metaverse has now got better defined, and there are literally more, solutions. And also we've got a different relationship with augmented reality, mixed reality, extended reality. More of that's within the organisations, and that people are using video streaming. So I think what's going to happen is that it will have an impact, but I think it will be a gradual impact. What people will start to do is do things in a gradual way, where they may start looking at sort of augmented reality, for certain functions.
Yes.
And then bring that in with video and, other things. So I think it's kind of like, it's important. Watch this space.
Yes.
That's what I would say.
Watch this space. Maybe in the future, in 2022, we'll be continuing this conversation. Listen, very quickly, kind of one sentence answer for this last part. What's the one thing that you want people to take away from our conversation today in terms of implementing transformational technologies? Harmeen.
Be bold, be fearless, be customer obsessed, make a decision.
Very good. Bola.
Wow. All of that. But I would also add that don't feel that you need to do this all alone either, because I think there's a lot of technology out there, and some of it can feel like it's a lot of information and there's a lot of complexity. So whatever it is, think about your business outcomes, but also think about who can help you, whether that's a partner, support service, or think about education and training. I know that's a lot, but those all kind of combine.
Super stuff. Well, listen, Harmeen, Bola, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us. We've got a poll that we just want to pop up right now. We're asking, which technologies are you planning to invest in within the next 5 years? Let us know your results, your thoughts on the poll. Which technologies are you planning to invest in the next 5 years? We'll come back to that in a few moments' time. But like I say, I'm sorry, the sands of time are against us. Harming, Bola, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Bola, don't go away, because I know you're going to be joining us for part 2 of today's show.